Hi, I'm David, and today I'm going to make a laptop stand.
I started out in SolidWorks to better visualize what the project would look like. As you can see here, there's the metal paperclip shape, which is acting as a support for the shelf, of which there are two, a bottom one for just putting some thin papers on, and then the top one, which is actually going to support the laptop.
Next, I cut out the profile of the shelves using a CNC wood router. This allowed me to cut out the vent port, which I couldn't just do on a table saw because it's enclosed. After a few passes on the planer, the wood was the right thickness and ready for drilling. Because everything's held together with dowel pins, I had to drill blind holes in the wood for the pins to slot into. Using the depth stop helped make sure that all the holes are the same depth. I spent a lot of time sanding and wishing I had access to a square sander. That would have made the process a lot easier and faster, but in the end, it was worth it. To get the steel shaped how I wanted, I used a universal metal bender. All I had to do was select the correct die, line it up, and go to town. The two supports didn't come out quite even, so I had to use some elbow grease to make the radius match. I used a Scotch-Brite pad to remove all the grit and grime that came with the steel, so I could actually mark it for measuring. I used a square to measure and cut the shelf supports to be the same length. Using a center punch made starting the holes for the dowel pins a lot easier. This is a really important step when drilling into hard steel because it helps prevent the bit from wandering. The geometry of the supports would have made it too difficult to use a drill press, so I opted to use a hand drill with some masking tape marking the correct depth. In hindsight, I should have drilled all of the holes prior to bending and then made matching holes in the wood. The pins didn't need to be too precise, so I just used metal cutters to cut the 1/8 inch rod into 1/2 inch pins. I did a dry fit to make sure that everything fit correctly. The pine boards were soft enough that I could play with the fit slightly, but overall I was happy with how everything looked. To get a more even surface finish, I used a glass bead blower, basically a sandblaster, to clean up the supports. I taped over the pinholes and applied several thin coats of black spray paint. For the wood, I wanted something that would really pop with the black supports, so I opted to use a red chestnut wood stain. To glue the pins into the wood and metal, I used 5-minute epoxy. This was my first time using epoxy and I was really nervous. The actual process wasn't too difficult, it just seemed rushed. I wish I'd used a little bit more on the bottom shelf, but between the two shelves I'm pretty confident there's enough for it to hold up. I dipped each pin in the epoxy and then placed them into the supports. I then used the mixing stick to smear more on the top of the pins before putting the shelf on. The stain came out beautifully. The red tone contrasts nicely with the black metal. If I was to do this again, I would probably just use screws instead of epoxy, but overall I'm very happy with how it turned out.